Welcome to episode 385 of the DFO Rundown, as always presented by Bet365. Get in the game, the conference finals starting on Tuesday. Florida, Carolina, Edmonton, Dallas on Wednesday. Get in the game at Bet365. Of course, we're going to talk lots of playoffs. We'll set up the conference finals. We'll talk about the teams who got kicked out of the playoff tournament recently, what's next for them, and more in a busy edition of the Rundown. I'm Jason Gregor. We welcome in Frank Seravalli. And Frank, some things change, some things stay the same. And we mentioned it on Thursday that it might be the most Leaf thing to do was win Game 6 and then come home and lose Game 7. And that's exactly what happened.
Not just lose Game 7, but make history and become or match the largest Game 7 defeat in league history. I mean, that's what we're looking at here. And I think the biggest thing as Leaf fans sift through yet another year of disappointment is that this isn't shocking. No part of this is surprising. You know, you said something the other day on the pod that really got me thinking, and I'm a big proponent of the phrase, but I'll turn it just a little bit and I'll say, when someone shows you who they are, believe it.
Yeah. Angela Mayo, baby. It's a great quote. Yes.
But this is 9 years of this team. 9 years of let's just convince ourselves. How many times earlier this season, flip on a channel, any channel, look at our pod. How many times did someone say, oh, feels different this time? You just search for reasons to convince yourself. 9 years of this generation of Toronto Maple Leafs is the most disappointing decade, I believe, in the organization's history. But beyond that, this group of Toronto Maple Leafs is going to go down as the biggest group of underachievers that we've ever seen. Pampered, well-paid, well-situated, uber-talented, Hart Trophy, scoring titles, 100-point seasons as players and as a team, and nothing to show for it. Like, you could sit here today and say, hey, you know, they were outclassed. They lost to the team that's the defending champs in Game 7. Maybe there's a thread to pull at. We've run the gamut of all of it. From, hey, we're just super happy to be here under Mike Babcock to, ooh, man, some weird things happened during those COVID years. Let's just create an excuse because it was a bubble or because they played without fans. And then it was just some bewilderment and let's try and tinker. And there was all these roster construction questions. And it was like, well, they just don't have the depth because they're spending too much on their forwards. And then now finally they have the depth, and the same guys that didn't produce year after year after year don't produce when it matters most. And then we're just expecting something to be different because the coach is different and the general manager is different and the goalie's different and Chris Tanev is taking 107 hits. What are we doing here?
Well, the new one is now they're blaming the fans, and we'll get to that in a second. But
oh my God.
I tweeted out because I wanted to look at just Game 7 specifically. And since Matthews and Marner came into the league, you'll see now they're 0-6 in Game 7s. Matthews has 3 assists, -4. Marner, 2 assists, -7. Nylander, 2 goals, 4 points, -4. Tavares has only played 4 of those games, wasn't there for the first one, injured for one of the other ones. 1 goal, -6. In their last 5 games, they've scored 1 goal each game. They've been outscored 18-5 in Game 6s. Now, that doesn't even include the Game 5 loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets, right? Remember that one? That was another one. But that's only game.
That was just another excuse. Oh, weird year, the bubble, COVID, whatever. Like, just whether it was that or the Montreal Canadiens year, honestly, I don't know which one's the bigger indictment.
Well, here's the thing. But last night it was like, wow, you know, geez, there's lots of pressure on these guys. And you know what? Oh, they're going to feel it, and the fans. And yeah, but, you know, they're a better team. Give me a break. They're the same team, okay? They've never lost to the team who won the Stanley Cup the year that they beat them in 7 games, okay? They lost to teams who got close. They never lost to the – so don't tell me they lost to the best team. They didn't lose to the best team. Now, Florida won last year. We don't know if they'll win this year. It's just the amount of excuses, and I like your word pampered, right? And here's the thing. So you can look at the players, but to me, you also have to look at Brendan Shanahan. He's been there overseeing this the entire time, GM after GM, coach after coach, other player. Oh, our depth guys can't score. Goaltender isn't good enough. Defense isn't good enough. I just showed you the numbers of their best, highest paid players. And what happens in game 7? A whole lot of nothing. Continually, nothing. And it's never, we had too many passengers. Do you ever hear one of them say, I got to play better? Yeah. Ever.
Mitch Marner barking at the entire bench, not even sweaty. How about you do something in game 7? It's endless.
I think the problem is at the top, they truly believe that they're working as hard as the other guys. And the truth of the matter is their superstars do not work as hard as the other league superstars in the key moments in the offseason anywhere. They just don't, and they definitely don't produce like them. That's just a fact. Nobody scores every game 7, but look at the numbers.
When you repeatedly not score.
Yes.
That just makes you the biggest collection of pant shitters we've ever seen.
Like Matthews and Marner's have no goals combined between them. Like they have, the numbers that I pulled, they have a total of 3 goals between the 4 of them. They have a total of 7 assists. So they have 10 points between 4 players in 6 game 7s, right? That, like, give me a break. You're not even at half a point a game per guy. Right, like that, and these are your big time scores, and now this have
is your $50 million collection of forwards.
And I love Paul Maurice, and I really respect Brad Marchand, but I'm sorry, you're going to try to somehow deflect this to the pressure and what the fans do. What? Those fans pay exorbitant amount of money. They're paying money to stand outside and cheer, for God's sakes, and you're going to tell me that they don't get support? Give me I'm done with it. Like the excuses.
It's every time.
I don't hear everybody making the same excuses for Winnipeg.
How many times
Winnipeg say, hey, they got to play better.
The media. Like I love everyone in the Toronto media corps. They're not hard edge. Name for me the big bad boogeyman who's going into that locker room every day and is, just grinding these guys. I don't see it.
Here's the difference. Connor Hellebuck struggles in the playoffs. Now, and the funny thing is Connor Hellebuck actually made it to the 3rd round once. These guys never have. And the last few years, he struggled. What do they write about? Hellebuck's got to be better. You know what they write in Toronto? Well, Austin Matthews isn't scoring, but man, he's playing really good defensively.
Yep.
Like,
I'm with you. It's excuse after excuse. No team has it better. No team is treated better.
That's true.
Team has more support. No team has more attention. No team has better facilities, treatment, whatever it is that you could possibly imagine. Use the Mitch Marner quote from a couple years ago when he said that they're treated like, quote, gods. That's his words, not mine. They are. So you can either want to be part of it and want to embrace it, or you can lie in the fetal position in your bed. Your choice.
Well, there should be mandatory reading for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Brendan Shanahan, everybody in the organization should go out. Whoever it is, I don't care, Shanahan, and every player it should be must read the Angela Duckworth Grit, right? The Power of Passion, Perseverance. It's an unbelievable book. She is presented to the NFL teams, and it talks about talent is one thing, but it's the willingness to people that can be uncomfortable, to get comfortable being uncomfortable and constantly pushing themselves. And I'm sorry, you can talk about all the pressure in Toronto. Yeah, it's a big market. There's no question about it. But their best players
ever bitch about pressure?
Yeah, their best players in Toronto have not shown up when it matters most. Point blank. There's no data. There's no number to show they have. So until they want to admit that their best need to be better, here's the thing, Frank, their best core, I think you take one of them and put them elsewhere, they'll have success if they're surrounded by if you put one of them in Florida, because in Florida, you've got enough grit to surround your other guys and they'll play better. That's just a fact. But they've got 4 guys and none of them have the dog in them. None of them.
That's why I think the real question that should be asked today on whatever it is, Monday, May 19th, as another Maple Leaf run ends less than halfway to the Stanley Cup final, or to the Stanley Cup, excuse me. Should the purge just end with Mitch Marner? Should it go deeper than that?
Well, they have to re-sign John Tavares? Like, in an odd and interesting fashion, Frank, he left the New York Islanders. They made it to 2 conference finals without him. Toronto never made it to 1.
Okay, but I should it go deeper than that?
Well, Matthews is what you're, because really, then there's Matthews. And like, to me, it's risky to, like, it's hard to find top end talent. And I don't discount that they have talent, but it's not the right mix, all of them. And to me, it started, and I've said this all along, I thought the biggest mistake they made was signing Tavares. They didn't need him. It's not what they were lacking. And then it forced them to have to overpay Marner and Matthews at that time. Now, you might say, hey, they still would have got big money, but it might not have been, it wouldn't have been 11 for Marner, well, 10.9, and it shouldn't have been 11.6 for Matthews. You would have saved $1 million on each guy. Well, now you got some other money to spend, and you could have, they needed to add someone with some ferocity. And just look at the organization.
They traded one.
2 of them.
Kadri.
Yeah,
Zach
and then they
Hyman.
didn't sign Zach Hyman.
Yeah.
2 guys who aren't as skilled, but they're more willed.
Yeah, you're right. And because of the financial constraints that they were in, they had to make some of those decisions, right? The Kadri one was way more based on playoff performance, but they picked the wrong guy to jettison because he had that in him that they really needed, and then went and won a cup in Colorado.
And you know why it stood out more? Because there was so lacking elsewhere. So yeah, Kadri, did he take a few undisciplined pennies? 100%.
For sure. Yeah.
But you sit down and you say, Nazem, and you have a conversation with him, because I didn't see him. You've got to set the standard in your room. I didn't see him take a lot of undisciplined penalties with Colorado. So you can't tell me he's not capable of it. It's the old adage. I'd much rather tame a stallion than whip a donkey. Mm-hmm. And you'd much rather have guys you have to say, hey, man, you need to control yourself, rather than, please, sir, can you show some emotion? Right? Like, it's not even close.
Yeah. So here's where I'm going with the question about Matthews. And I want to just preface this fully by saying, like, this is just a thought experiment, right? There's no reporting going on here. I just think today, this week, as you're going through everything, you should be asking a million questions today if you're in the Leafs front office. But for me, as part of this thought experiment, it's not just the playoff failures and his repeated inability to show up. For me, it's also the chronic injuries. How significant is what he's dealing with? And he mentioned, last Sunday, this isn't the time to talk about my injury. And that's fine. I can appreciate that. But we don't have any clarity. Only the Leafs do. And if it really is a back injury, or if it is whatever it might be, there's been talk, it's his wrist, whatever. If it is a chronic lower back injury, I don't know about you, I'm not a doctor, but those things tend to never really get better. Should you investigate or talk about what would totally changing up all of this do? Is that an absolutely insane question?
Well, I think it's a risk to just get rid of all your high-end talent, because usually when you trade...
Wait, hold on. I want to say also, it's very unlikely that it happens. I just want to say that. But this is a pure thought experiment. That's it.
Yeah. Well, my original thought would be, then I'm going to spend a lot of time looking for some, like, I need some talent. And then I want to surround the talent with some other guys who can help elevate the talent. Because right now, I don't think they have a guy. Marner and Matthews, like, they got Joe Thornton way late in his career, right? They got Patrick Amardo late in his career. They never got anyone who, matched Pacioretty, I thought played really well for them. But they've never had anyone who was a real ferocious leader or player on the ice. And because I do think sometimes, like when Duncan Keith came to Edmonton, Evan Bouchard raved about what Duncan Keith taught him.
What is Chris Tanev?
But
what is Oliver Ekman-Larsson? What is...
Yeah.
I mean, go through the list. Like, we've had Wayne Simmons. I mean, go through all of them. Like, there's been other players that have been brought in over the years to add more character, to add... What was Ryan O'Reilly? He's a Conn Smythe winner, for Christ's sake. One of the ultimate dogs of the sport. Yeah, okay. Nick Foligno, another great leader. Like, how many other leaders have been brought in here and have failed and won it out? Ryan O'Reilly didn't resign. Nick Foligno didn't resign.
Yeah, well, I guess you wonder. Well, the Ryan O'Reilly one is quite interesting to me. I'd always like to know why. Like, what was it about Toronto that didn't appeal to him?
Okay, but okay.
Aren't you curious?
Yeah, I mean, I am, but like, it's kind of obvious, isn't it? Like, didn't like the mojo, didn't like the vibe.
Okay, well, shouldn't that have been paused to say, now why is that? Like, why would a guy like that, who's won, right? Why would he be like, this isn't for me?
Yeah, we'll find out after his career's over, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, here's what I think is likely to happen. Mitch Marner walks, or they try and find a way to trade his rights somewhere to get a little something back. And then I think the next thing, well, I would say even before that, is you have to figure out the Matt Nyes contract, because that's going to be very important. And I think he's a player that does something that no one else on this team does, which is score goals while having a physical edge. Guy was a machine on the ice this year, and it brings in intensity and physicality that they desperately need. Then the third thing, depending on how you order them, I think you got to find a way to move Morgan Riley. I don't think that deal is going to age well. I think time's up. I think you need a clean break and a clean start, and find someone out there that's starved for defense. There's got to be some kind of taker that's willing to take on that deal and figure it out from there.
Okay. Yeah. What about Tavares? You think he signs?
I think you make him put his money where his mouth is. He says what he says after Sunday night's game. I just want another opportunity, another crack at this. He's made well north of $100 million in his career. And everyone wants to be respected, right? Everyone wants to, you want to be paid something that is, at least in the ballpark commensurate to what you think you're worth. And there will definitely be some teams that will be willing to throw some money at Tavares. He's a consistent, high-end producer and a guy that certainly helps you get to the postseason. But this is an exit from the core four, for one. He's not part of that. He's not a focal point of this team anymore in both dollars and contribution. And I think you say to him, look, we'd love to have you back. We'll give you 3 times 5 and cap it and say, if it really is about the money, by all means, go somewhere else. If it really is about helping the Toronto Maple Leafs, this is how you can do it. And that's it. And if he doesn't want it or isn't willing to take it, that's on him. You say, do what you say you want to do. Mean what you say.
Yeah, no.
I'd put it right back on him.
That's valid.
And then you leave him as maybe the perfect 3C in the league. Because that's really what, at that price point, he would be.
We did have 38 goals last year. But what you said was playoff production compared to regular season production. That's not
what I'm actually keying in on, because I think at $5 million and where he's slotted on the team, if it was 3C, you couldn't ask for, even if the production is low in the playoffs, you couldn't ask for better than that.
Yeah. So then you got to go get it 2C though.
Yeah. Okay, fine. But my point is, take the pressure off of him. Not a focal point anymore, just a nice piece and a nice contributor. And that's it. Leave it at that.
Well, it'll be a fascinating offseason for them. But let's start to talk about the two teams that are still in the East. Florida and Carolina met 2 years ago. Florida swept them in 4 straight. Carolina absolutely obliterated Washington. Washington barely had 20 shots a game, Frank. They had one player in the series who had more than 2 shots a game. That's it. And that was Ovechkin. He had 14. The next highest was 9 in 5 games. They had so many forwards who basically had 1 shot a game. It was complete domination. Now, it wasn't overly riveting to watch, I'll tell you that. But now they take on Florida, second time in 3 years. They got home ice advantage. Well, what do you make of the Hurricanes, how they've played thus far, and their chances against Florida?
I think this is going to be an incredibly tight series. I think Carolina is almost perfectly healthy. Freddie Anderson has played lights out. And these two teams play a very similar style in terms of how they approach the game and what makes them successful. And the interesting thing about it is I think Carolina does it faster than Florida.
Yeah, they play. I would agree they play quicker. There's no question about that. Florida, though, like, man, they are aggressive and they're relentless and they're better at being physical than Washington is for sure.
Yeah, but Carolina's not going to back down. I don't think they mind that. And I also think Carolina's defense is really well situated to be able to withstand the physicality and pressure that Florida provides. I think Carolina has an advantage in net, which is surprising to say, because I think Bobrovsky's been just okay. And they've got clearly the way better defense core, but Florida has a massive advantage at forward.
Nah, I don't know, man. Seth Jones's play here lately for Florida is that closes that gap quite a bit for me on the blue line. God, he was unreal. He was the best player on the ice yesterday by a mile, I thought, for Florida.
Yeah, but did you listen to Spencer Carberry about Jacob Slavin?
Oh, yeah. Slavin's a great defensive defenseman, but he doesn't bring the offensive that Jones brings. Right.
Okay.
But he's a good defender.
He doesn't defend like Slavin does. So which one matters more at this time of year? It's pretty clear. Let your forwards do the scoring if they can. It's always important to contribut, but you got to defend.
Yeah, I didn't see Jones getting lit up by Toronto in that series defensively. I just saw him. I just saw he was mobile. He's moving the puck.
Did they light up anyone? Did they do anything? Like I'm sorry. I'm not giving Jones props or flowers for that. I'm just saying that's more on Toronto.
Yeah, but Washington didn't light up anybody either, right? Like they barely got shots.
But I give that total credit to Carolina. That's the difference. That's what I'm saying. That was one team's defense defending better than a forward group was able to contribute from Washington.
Yeah, the matchup on their defense against the Florida forwards, I think, is a very interesting one. Like Florida's third line right now, it's unbelievable with Marchand. Right, that line is with Lundell. God, I love that line. Like Osterinen, like what did Marchand have? 3 points, I think, yesterday in Game 7. Like third or fourth oldest guy ever to do it. Always beats up Toronto. Then just adds a little extra juice by saying, no, they're really close. That was it's like, no, you guys don't change anything. You're doing everything really well. Just keep it going so I can beat you again. That's kind of what I think that was. But what do you make of the, like Matthew Tkachuk? Florida won that series, Frank, and he's clearly not 100%. You watch him play. He's not the impactful player he was, and it's clearly coming off the injury. But the Barkov matchup, I'm assuming it's going to be Slavin. I don't know if it's going to be so much a forward line as it's going to be the defense pairing of Slavin.
I'd say Barkov is in for one.
Yeah. Well, that's a great matchup, man. Like I like it. It's probably going to be a low scoring series. I kind of get the sense. I hope I'm wrong. I like to see lead changes, right? Like we didn't see a ton of lead changes here lately.
Yep. So I'm really torn about my pick here. I put down Cats in 7. Sorry, I put down Cats in 6. But I really have a tough time seeing Carolina exiting. I really do for a lot. And you just mentioned the Tkachuk factor as well. Like Carolina is really healthy, and I know they're hungry after getting swept in the conference final to write a different story. I think this is the best. And again, in a very odd way, this is the best version of the Carolina Hurricanes that we've seen in a while. And it's funny to say because they let a lot of really strong players go.
Yeah, I have a hard time picking again. I picked Florida in 6, and I just think the makeup of their team, size, skill, experience, the way they play, they can play almost any way if you want. And man, I thought Bobrovsky in the later stages of that Toronto series was excellent. And when he gets rolling, man, it's a big difference maker. Carolina, they're relentless and they will come at you, and they come in waves. There's maybe not a better team who plays their style more consistently than Carolina. You know what we talked earlier about Toronto's rank? To me, same thing. At the end of the day, I don't know if Carolina has the big dog to win the series.
That totally fair. I feel pretty confident either way in saying that I think the Cup is going back to the West.
Well, the West actually has home ice in the Cup final. So either way, whether it's Edmonton or Dallas, they both were higher than Florida and Carolina. So you're picking whoever wins the West is going to win the Cup.
Yes.
Ooh, all right.
Perfect time to bring in Tyler.
Yeah, we'll bring in Tyler, and then we'll talk about the West. We'll go back to back for the second straight year.
What's up, boys? Ready to roll here. Another edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Bet365. Want to get in on the action for the Stanley Cup Playoffs at Bet365? They got you from player props, game props, totals, money line. You can even bet on futures like series winners and the Stanley Cup champion. More on that in a second. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game. An official partner of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Must be 19 or older. Let me start with this, Frank, because it does kind of line up with what you were just saying. For your fill in the blank, I want you guys to rank them in order of 1 through 4. The team that you believe could win the Stanley Cup in order, blank, 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 blank. Give me the 4 teams in order, Greg's. In order.
Well, I guess I got to go at number 1 with the team I picked at the start of the playoffs, because that'd be stupid to change. So I'll go Edmonton. Second, I would go Florida, then Dallas, then Carolina.
Frank, you any different than that?
Yeah, I would go Dallas, Edmonton, Florida, Carolina.
Dallas, Edmonton, Florida, Carolina. The books have the Oilers as the favorites. Bet365 has them at plus 230. Then the Panthers at plus 240. The Stars at plus 275. And then the Canes actually somewhat
nailed it.
Fourth at plus 330. So yes, Gregor, you did nail it. Let me throw you guys this one while I'm on the futures tab at Bet365. The player you'd be most confident in betting on to win the Conn Smythe is blank, Frank.
Well, by nature of the way that's all unfolded, it has to be Mikko Rantanen, right? I wouldn't say that I would bet him because I probably wouldn't like the odds. It's not enough juice. What are the odds?
It's plus 400. So compared to the Stars at plus 275, there's value there, I suppose, because you're right. He does feel like the one player. Like, I don't think McDavid has it, quote, locked up if the Oilers win yet, but it feels like Rantanen has it locked up if Dallas wins.
That's the thing, though. He might not get out of this round.
Yeah.
So and as a Conn Smythe voter, I couldn't vote anyway. I just want to be abundantly clear about that. I think he would have to be the pick at this exact moment in time. He's had a singularly transformational Stanley Cup playoffs and definitely has gotten the most attention and love.
Greg. Yeah, like if you said halfway through who's the leader in the Conn Smythe, it'd be Mikko Rantanen. Which one would you bet on? It depends on if you think they're going to win the round or not, right? Yeah. That's ultimately what it comes down to. Carolina doesn't have any standout which kind of fits who their team is. I don't think they have one player who's been like their obvious choice. Florida, I don't think so. They have a different guys every game. If you look at the last few games of that series, you'd be like, geez, Seth Jones's name might be at the top for Florida. Edmonton, I still think would be McDavid. Like, I know they have a ton of depth scoring, but McDavid's still, 17 points in 2 rounds. It's still pretty good. He's on pace for like 34 points again. So I would probably still have to say if I had to pick, because I think Edmonton's going to win the series. So then I would say McDavid.
McDavid is the odds-on favorite, by the way, plus 360. Then Rantanen at plus 400. They have Anderson at third, Freddie Anderson at plus 500, and the next Hurricane doesn't appear until 10th on the list at 28-1. It's Svechnikov and Aho are tied in that spot. One more here.
Do you have odds on Slavin?
Yeah, I just
because if you were to like sprinkle and you think somehow Carolina is going to beat Florida and they've got a puncher's chance in the Cup final, honestly, it might be one of those situations where you could find yourself, even if they're, game 1 or whatever, they win game 1 of this, you could find a great cash out option if something like that was offered.
60-1 on Jacob Slavin.
Sprinkle a couple bucks on there and you might be able to cash out at 1,200 or something. Yeah. I'm just like, just a thought.
I see where you're coming from there. Okay, last one as we preview these series on Bet365. The series you'd be most confident in going 7 games is blank, Frank.
I would actually say Carolina, Florida. I think
Carolina,
these two teams are very, very similar.
I would agree. Yeah. I think that both of them, like, I'd be surprised if either series in 5, but at the same time, I think if one team gets hot in either series, like, you know what, you could easily see it. We've seen short series that were close, you know what I mean, where one team wins 3 games in overtime and you're like, oh God, the series is over in 5, but the games are really close. So I guess in that sense, but yeah, I think I picked both of them in 6. So, but if I had to pick one, I would also lean Carolina. To me is, in a weird way, I think Carolina is the biggest wild card of the 4 teams. Right? Like they how they suffocated Washington in that series really makes me think, like, my God, like maybe they're playing way better than any of us think.
Yeah. They're both series, by the way, plus 190 to go 7 games. I was debating, like, you can parlay each series to go over 5.5 games and it's like plus 130. And I was like, I started to do what you just said, Greg. So I'm like, in that Florida Carolina series, like, if it's a bunch of coin flips, like, what if one team just gets the bounces and they finish it off 4-1 because they get a couple of OT winners? All right, let's shift gears here. I'll give you guys one off-season question before I go. On Daily Faceoff Live, Frank and I have began our off-season previews. We go from the bottom of the standings and then all the way up. And my question to you guys, the bottom 5 team whose off-season intrigues you the most is blank. So you have San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, Philly, and Boston are the 5 teams you can pick from, Greg's.
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, Philly's already made a pretty big move, so I guess that's less. It takes one thing off the list that's intriguing to me. I'm going to go with the Boston Bruins because A, still looking for a coach. B, what type of moves are they going to make in Boston? Are they going to make a splash? Are they going to come back with their center iceman? Would Boston? Would they surprise people? Would they take a run at Mitch Marner? Like, I'm kind of curious to see what the Bruins do. So, and I also think they're the best of the 5 teams. So to me, they're the most intriguing because they have a chance quickest to be more competitive.
Yeah, you took the answer from me. That was who I would have selected, but I'll go with Nashville because, look, I think they're in dire straits. I think they've got a serious culture issue. I think they've got some significant long-term contracts. And they're already an old team. You've got 3 first-round picks. You've got a wild card draft. Do you leverage one of those picks to try and get off of an expensive contract that you've got to try and free yourself up some space? I think they're going to have to think long and hard about it, and I think they've got some significant problems to work through.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, do you have to have some maybe awkward conversations? Like all those guys they signed last summer got trade protection with them. And I know they said at the deadline that they were doing like the courtesy thing with Ryan O'Reilly, I believe, right? Saying like, we're kind of treating it like he has a no movement clause. But like, do you have to have an awkward conversation with like a Jonathan Marsh or something? And be like, hey, listen, the other guys we have to attach assets to get rid of, we can get something for you. Where would you be open to going?
I think that the conversation wouldn't be as awkward as you think. I think there's a few guys there that are miserable.
Interesting. All right. There you go, boys. That is a wrap on this week's edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Bet365.
Can I just add one more thing? Because you got me thinking about something about Carolina when you mentioned if you wonder if they're playing better than we all think. I think when you're trying to size up these matchups, I try and think of it like, do you do any horse racing handicapping? Have you ever done that?
A little bit, yeah.
So like you've got these speed figures and
yes.
You've got distance run, you've got quality of competition, meaning what were the previous races? Then you've got race history. What are they a closer? What type of race do they run? All those things. And you try and mash them all up and you try and figure out which one matters the most, which one is going to be the detail that tells the story of that race. And it's obviously a crapshoot and a difficult thing to do on a consistent basis because things are random and stuff happens. But I think one other part of this that we didn't mention about that East final matchup is just how big of a step up in competition it is for Carolina going from Washington and New Jersey to Florida. It's a whole different ball of wax. And I think that part might be the biggest detail that looms large. Is that fair to say?
Well, part of me is like, did they dominate, or did they, New Jersey, who was banged up, and Washington, who just didn't look that quick, are those teams on par with some of the other teams, that the other teams had to beat to get there? It's just a guess and it's opinion on it. But if you look at some of the numbers, it makes you wonder that, Carolina playing Florida, I would agree, I think is much different than any of the other teams. Like Florida's played Tampa, they played Toronto, pretty good teams. You look in the Pacific and the Central, like, I don't know. I think at the start, we all said the easiest road to the playoffs would be coming through the Metro.
Yeah. And it's in horse racing terms, that's like going from an allowance race to a stakes race. Like it becomes a huge step up. So how do you manage the quality of competition increasing? They took care of it, like, to their own credit. You can only deal with the route that you have, which is playing two teams. They dispatched them both in 5. Like, it doesn't really get a lot better than that. And they snuffed out a really high scoring offense, a team that was in the running for the President's Trophy in the regular season. So, I mean, they've made quick work of it. They're healthy. Their goalies play. Like, I'm having a very, very difficult time not picking Carolina. I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah. Well, you just pick them then.
Yeah, I think Florida just has an extra gear that they can get to that I don't know that Carolina possesses, and that's the trouble.
I know a lot of people say fatigue factor, but we have to remember Tampa Bay went to 3 consecutive finals too. So, now they lost.
That's a big reason why I said I feel confident in the West, because I think even if Florida gets through, or if Carolina I don't think Carolina matches up too well against either one of those two teams in the West. And I think if Florida gets through, that it's going to be a compounding effect, and that one of those teams in the West is going to be better off.
Well, let's get to that series now. The Stars, of course, get by Winnipeg on an incredibly emotional night for the Jets and the Scheifele family. You know what? When I heard the news, Frank, I knew for sure he was going to play. Having lost my father myself, I think every son at that moment, obviously I'm not an NHL player, but you know what? You always want to, it doesn't matter what your age is. Your dad's always your dad. And if you have a good relationship with your father, it's someone, you always look up to your dad. You want to make him proud. And that relationship, seeing his son there, he always wanted his son, to achieve his goal. And so to not play, I don't think was ever an option really for Mark. And you play at the heavy heart, but man, it was an emotional game for sure. And, he scores the goal and you see everything. And, and then obviously Dallas wins it, in overtime on a power play. I guess, what'd you make of the game and kind of for the Jets and how they went out?
Look, I think the Jets have nothing to hang their heads about, and certainly not Mark Scheifele. Dallas is a really good team, and they fought back and made it a series. I mean, one shot away from getting a Game 7 on home ice where you've been lights out. I think there have been various missteps for the Winnipeg Jets over the course of, this playoff run and before, and certainly left a lot to be desired in certain aspects. And the Hellebuck question, I don't think has necessarily been answered, but he did go through a stretch to close out the series where he made 47 saves on 48 shots. He did knuckle down when it mattered. I think the Jets had a great year that ends in disappointment because you're not moving on and not getting to the Cup final and not getting a chance to play for the Cup. But I don't look at the Jets and say, blow it up, start over, big issues. I think it has a totally different vibe and feel than somewhere else. Even though I had compared the Jets to the Leafs of the West, I just don't think that has any of the same feel.
I'll disagree slightly. I think there's concerns in Winnipeg. Their road record in the playoffs They've won one road game the last 3 years. Like, you've got to find a way to be better. You look at Hellebuck's numbers, and they got better in that series. He ended up, I think, with a 905 save percentage. So, so maybe that'll help him moving forward. But there is some clear goals that a Vezina Trophy goalie unscreened from distance shouldn't allow in. Jake Ottinger was clearly the difference in the series for me. He was the better goalie, and he made more key saves at key times than Hellebuck did. And ultimately, I think that was the difference in the series. This is one where your best player, we talk about, hey, Matthews needs to score some goals. Marner needs to score goals. Hellebuck needs to make more saves. He, especially in a system that isn't a system that exposes him and they're giving up chance after chance after chance. That's a really good, quote, goalie environment. And I just think Hellebuck's going to have to figure out how to win a game on the road.
I'm with you, but what kind of fundamental changes are you thinking? Because a lot of their guys are locked in. Yeah, they've got cap space. It's always difficult to attract players to sign in Winnipeg. You could make some trades, but how different do you expect the Jets to look? I mean, I'd expect a very similar iteration next year.
Probably. I think one thing, Frank, maybe you look and say, hey, Hellebuck's only playing 55 games in the regular season. Right? Like, who knows? You got to change something. You can't just do the exact same and have them play 64 or 62 or 60 games. Now, maybe that has nothing to do with the fact that they're 1-10 on the road and they've been outscored 48-20. Like, it's not like they're losing games 2-1, Frank. They're getting blown out. Like 4.36 goals against per game in 11 road games the last 3 years. Like, it's just that, to me, you have to look and break down the film and be like, okay, what's happening here? What is it like? Do we miss the whiteout that much that we can't perform on the road? Like, they gotta solve that problem. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I don't know if you can just say, hey, you know what? You go back and you work on your game and everybody come back. They've got to dig a little bit deeper. You have to. This is the time to ask questions. You've had a very good team. You've been a very consistent team, except come in the playoffs. Well, I guess in the playoffs you are consistent. You're a consistent no-show on the road. That's just, you can't argue those type of numbers.
Yeah, I think that's more of a fluke than anything. Like, and I would say that I think a lot of it comes back to your goaltending. Couldn't buy a save on the road.
Yeah.
That's one guy. I don't look at that as the whole. And yeah, there were parts about the road games that I didn't love. I thought a lot of their body language was poor. They looked disinterested at times, particularly in the St. Louis series. I think getting a 2-0 lead, they thought that they were just going to march right into St. Louis and mow them over. And that wasn't going to happen. But I mean, home and road splits are like, how many times do we go through this with Carolina?
But they're only like, they're 7-5 at home. It's not like they're dominant. And here's the thing. They've been a regular season team that averages about 2 goals against per game. But in the playoffs at home, it's 3.25. And on the road, it's 4.36. So either place, they're giving up way too much. So if it's the goaltender, and which I think in some cases clearly is, he's allowed some goals. Like, you looked at his goals saved, above expected this year, or the worst. They're like -10 or 12 or whatever the heck it was at the end of it. And that's what an average goalie, because that's what Stephen Valiquette outlined, that this is an average goalie on what they expect the saves to be. Well, Hellebuck's not even an average goalie, Frank. I think he's an above average goalie, but in the playoffs, he's playing like a below average goalie. And so to me, that starts there, but then they got to funnel out. Like, they give up more. What are they doing in Winnipeg? Because they've been a very good regular season team. How can they get it to be more successful in the playoffs? And the problem is, you don't really know if what you're doing works until you get to the playoffs again. Yeah. That's the challenge.
Yeah. What do you do with Ehlers? Sign him or let him walk?
Well, it depends what he wants. I'm not paying Nikolai Ehlers $7 million. Like, I think he's a good player. I'm not sure he's a difference maker for me.
I think it's a really nice supporting piece, though. Like, 28 goals every season, 62 points every season. You need guys like that. And they've got oodles of cap space. If he has any interest in returning, I think you've got to give him a raise and find a way to keep him. Because I think it's so hard to find guys there.
And he does. And what did he have? 5 goals this year in the playoffs, and I think he missed 5 games. So like, he was fine. He shows up. And although the other thing, Frank, you talk about Matthews, like Nikolai Ehlers, the problem is when he's in the lineup, he's good, but he misses too many games. Like, hasn't he missed? I think in the last 3 years, like 10 of their 23 playoff games or something like that.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So that's a concern. You pay for him, and then when you want him, he's not available. That's always a challenge. So let's get to the Western Conference Final. The Oilers and the Stars, they met last year. Edmonton 1-6. What do you make of this series?
Man, I don't think there's a lot separating these teams either. I think you've got the two deepest forward groups still playing in the playoffs, with all due respect to Florida, going head to head. I think you've got defense cores that have some upper end talent, but definitely have their warts. And I think you've got a massive disparity in goaltending. Jake Ottinger has been the playoffs' best goalie. Again, with all due respect to Freddie Anderson. Ottinger's been fantastic. He's been really tough to get by. And I love the moxie that we've seen from Edmonton. Like, they've got a belief in what they do. It doesn't really matter how many goals they're down, what they're trailing in the series. Been there, done that, yawn, move on. It's just that Dallas isn't lacking any experience either. And I think anyone thinking that this rematch of the Western Conference Final from a year ago is going to be similar, I think is laughing, because Dallas played last year with 4 defensemen, essentially. That's not going to be the case this year. Harley's playing lights out. Heiskanen looked better and better as the series went on and really started to make things happen late in that series against Winnipeg. I think Edmonton has a real stiff test on their hand.
Yeah, well, the question to me I have about Dallas is, I know everybody talks about their depth scoring. Well, in the regular season, their depth scoring has been awful in the playoffs. Awful. So you look at guys. So now Mikko Rantanen, I'm just looking at 5-on-5 scoring, because there's barely any power plays now. There's like 1 or 2 a game. So the majority of the game's 5-on-5. Mikko Rantanen, 5-on-5, 6 goals. He has 37.5% of Dallas's goals. Right? You throw in his 2 line mates, and now they're over 50% from one line. Edmonton, McDavid and Draisaitl combined have scored 19% of Edmonton's forward goals at 5-on-5. They got way more depth. And so here's the interesting number. You put in Jamie Benn, Matt Duchene, Jason Robertson, Tyler Seguin. They've combined, Frank, for 1 goal and 2 assists at 5-on-5 in the playoffs. That's it. The Oilers, every forward has done more than that. Like, Dallas had better depth in the regular season, but right now their depth is on a milk carton, MIA. And if their depth doesn't wake up, there's no chance they're going to win the series. They're not going to, because, well, you have Rantanen and Edmonton has McDavid and Draisaitl. So they cancel it out, right? And probably still advantage. So they're going to, that line of Ben, Duchene, and Seguin. And I really think Pete DeBoer here, to me, it comes down to coaching. So Heiskanen was unreal, by the way, in game 6. He was so damn good. Yeah. I think you look at his minutes, I think now they don't have to dress 7 defensemen anymore. They dressed 7 the last 3 games. So they can play him. Him and Harley are the best pair in the series, no doubt. They have the best pair. I think Edmonton 1 through 6 has better defense because they got more puck movers who can move the puck, and they're not getting shredded 5-on-5. You just look at the numbers, and I'll get to some of the other numbers so far in the playoffs. But I wonder if Pete DeVore is going to change his lines, because the Duchene, Seguin, Ben line has been awful.
Yeah,
right. Like awful. They're getting caved in shots. They got no goals. They're getting outscored all over the ice. Marchment and Duchene had a really good regular season, and so did you had Ben with Johnston and Roberts, and that line was great. I think you got to put those lines back together if you're Dallas on game 1, because the lines you've been running with right now aren't working. Right now, I know Robertson's coming off an injury, Frank, so there's a question there, but I would go back to what got them going in the regular season, because those lines, both of those,
are they not working? They dispatched the Avs and they dispatched the Jets, the President's Trophy winner and a sexy Stanley Cup pick. How much are they not working?
They're working because, as you said, Jake Ottinger has been their best player. Did you know that every forward on Dallas has a below 50 shot share? They're not out shooting the opposition. They're getting outscored. The only line that's outscoring is the Finn line. And they got outshot, but they're killing them, right? So that's saving their goals against ratio. Like, if you look at their 5-on-5 numbers, they've been getting crushed in possession time, but Ottinger's played unreal. And their power play was quite good.
So did you just hit the nail on the head then when you said that this series is going to come down to which team's depth scores, essentially?
Well, Edmonton's depth scores have been way better, right? By far. Like, they're getting contributions from every line. I think they're the numbers all I went at, even if you go to NHL Edge, and you and I will debate this, but Edmonton's actually a faster team. NHL has all the average numbers, they're quicker. Edmonton's puck moving defenders.
I don't look at Dallas and say they're a super fast team.
No. But Edmonton's defenders allow them to move the puck. Like, Vegas had the most 5-on-5 goals from a forward group in the regular season of any team in the West. They only scored 6 goals in 5 games, 5-on-5 from their forwards. Edmonton's done a really good job of limiting it. And so if Dallas comes in with a bunch of guys, Frank, who have, I have to think, not a ton of confidence. Now, we all know that can change in a game or two, but they've got to wake up, or otherwise I think Edmonton's going to skate through them. And the biggest wild card, of course, is Stu Skinner. So is it Stu Skinner that played last year against Dallas? The Stu Skinner really who, after he gets benched, Stu Skinner's really good, right? Like, we saw it last year for 15 games, and now we've seen it. He goes back-to-back shutouts against Vegas. So to me, he's probably the biggest wild card. If Skinner just plays well, it's hard for me to see Dallas beating him.
That's a big if. Like, I mean,
but it isn't. If you look at his history, right? His history after getting sat, he's excellent.
He might get sat again, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, maybe.
If Cal Pickard is healthy at some point during this series, it wouldn't shock me that Chris Knobloch goes back to him.
No, not if unless Skinner gets absolutely lit up. I don't think there's any chance. And he's not. And Pickard, by the way, is not ready to start the series. Right. He's not even going to be backing up to start the first 2 games. Yep. So, and I think there's been so much talk about Dallas's depth, but when you dig into their depth in the playoffs, it has not been good. Yeah. It's been Jake Ottinger. Jake Ottinger has been really good. I think that's the reason they got by Winnipeg, because look at some of the goals Hellebuck let in, man.
So what I would say to that is something that Tyler says all the time. They're due. That depth is too good to go 3 rounds in a row without contributing. I'm sorry.
Well, that's fair. So do you think the coach changes his lines though and goes back to what worked all regular season?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Because I think he should strongly consider it. Right? Like, I don't know why you wouldn't. Like, it worked for both different combinations. You got your Finn line. It's playing unreal. You're not touching the Hintz, Granlund, Rantanen line. Like, no chance. That line's playing awesome. But Duchesne, Ben, and Sagan, it's not working. And it's not working for Marchment on the other side with Robertson. So I would put Marchment's actually on a different line. So I would look at it. And because I think that's what got the Stars. It's the old adage, Frank, when we chirp Boston, they went away with what got them success in the playoffs. So I would go, what got you success in the regular season? Those combinations.
That's what I made the joke to you. Like, how unsuccessful have they been knocking off the Avs and beating the President's Trophy winner? Man, really shitty run so far.
No, but if you look at the numbers 5-on-5.
I get it. But there's a reason why he's stuck with it. I mean, there is.
Well, Robertson's injury was part of it, right? But now that he's back and he's played 6 games and he still doesn't, like, you mentioned Heiskanen, like his 3rd game, you're like, okay, this guy's back. He was unbelievable. Robertson has played 6 games. He has 1 assist in 6 games, nothing 5-on-5. He doesn't look like he's, fully recovered yet. So maybe that's why they don't do it. I don't know, but
so the Stars have the best goalie. They've got the 1st and 2nd best defenseman. And the Oilers have the 1st, 2nd best forwards. Am I reading that right?
Well, Rantanen, it's hard to say, Well, Draisaitl.
You're building a team. Are you taking Rantanen or Draisaitl?
Oh yeah, I'm taking Draisaitl McDavid all day. Yes.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah.
But if you're building a team, you're taking Heiskanen and Harley first, right? Before you're taking an Oiler?
Yeah.
Okay.
But then I'd probably the next 4 would be Edmonton though on defense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cody CC Revenge series coming on that.
Yeah, well, you look at him and Lindell, like they played all the tough minutes. Now, obviously Heiskanen was out, but I'm assuming Heiskanen and Harley are going to get the McDavid line. So
And what's the story with Ekholm, by the way?
He's not ready to. I know he skated. I think when Ekholm, if he gets in later in the series, Frank, I think Edmonton, if they're smart, does what Dallas did, and they play 7 defensemen. And you see how Ekholm can coming off a groin injury, man. Especially when we saw what happened the last time. He came in a game, played like 152, and one time he fell with no one around him. Now the second time he got clipped, but groin injuries, man. I think Edmonton, if they're playing well, it lowers the chance of Ekholm playing.
Okay.
So
who's your pick? You got the Oilers?
Yeah, I picked Edmonton in 6. Well, I picked Edmonton to start the playoffs, so you got to stick with the He's kind of foolish to change.
Yep. I got the Stars in 7.
And you and I are 9-3 still? You each went 3-1 last round?
Florida win, Carolina win.
You had Winnipeg. Oh, no, you had Vegas.
I had Dallas. I had Dallas and Vegas.
Yeah, so I had 3, you had 3.
Okay.
So we're 9-3.
9-3.
So we each have Florida, and then one of us will have a better record this time because I have Edmonton and you have Dallas. So we'll see. It's I'm looking forward to it. And any quick news, the coaching carousel, on teams still looking, Boston, Pittsburgh, etc. Anything any closer that you're hearing?
I would think that we get an answer this week on the New York Islanders front. I think they desperately need to make a decision. And
before they hire a GM?
No, I think they need to make the GM decision this week. And I think that part is critical. Cannot let this linger past Memorial Day in the US. That, and I think it's safe to say that Jeff Blashill is the front runner for Chicago's job. We'll see what happens with the rest of the other positions.
Woodcroft in Seattle?
I could see Woodcroft in Boston. But I don't know what's taken Boston so long either.
And Pittsburgh?
I'm wondering if they think outside the box a little bit. Mitch Love?
Yeah. A lot of people really like him. I'll keep saying his name, but I think Todd Nelson should get a look. We'll see if it happens. But I think a team would not regret that decision.
I agree.
Frank, enjoy your week. We'll chat with you. We'll have some games to discuss on Thursday. That's the rundown brought to you by Bet365.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.